Welcome to the Unmistakably Magic Podcast. I'm RJ.
And I'm Cort.
Why are we talking so high? We are two lifelong fans of Disney parks and all theme parks.
Each week, we bring you the latest news from Disney parks and beyond.
Plus, this week we're going to be talking about Q's.
Q's.
Like the letter?
No.
This week is brought to you by the letter Q.
Okay, Cookie Monster.
Yeah, I watch a lot of Sesame Street.
I don't. It's not my demographic anymore.
Oh, okay. So we're going to talk about Q's.
The least. Well, the thing that people like the least about amusement parks.
It's true.
But they can be really fun. Not all queues are created equal, as we will be discussing in this episode.
Oh, snap.
In case you missed it, check out our news video or audio.
Over on iTunes.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, it's episode 66. Let's talk about some Q's.
Let's jump right in.
I don't like Q's.
You know, some queues I like better than other queues.
Some Q's.
There are some good queues. Like, I'd stand in line in some queues.
There are.
And I'd get a fast pass to avoid some queues.
True.
How many times can we say queues this episode?
Q's. I should have a little counter.
Ping!
I'm too lazy for that, but
It's going to be
ping.
every queue.
Q.
Bing! So, in case you haven't been to an amusement park before, there are these things called queues.
Don't know why you'd be subscribed to our YouTube then if you don't.
It's true. Or if you don't live in the UK, 'cause that's what they call them over there.
They call
Lines.
everything a line, yeah.
No,
every
everything's
line
a queue.
Is a queue.
Everything's a queue.
Yeah.
Are you queuing? When I was over there, I literally was standing around just like looking at stuff, and a queue formed behind me. And I turned around, and they're like, "What are you queuing for?" And I'm like, "Walking? I don't know."
They're just so polite over there.
I'm queuing to. They're not polite.
But they know how to queue.
They do know how to queue.
I've always heard that about them.
And they enjoy queuing for some reason.
Oh, are you queuing?
Are you queuing? Can I queue with you? Are you queuing? Oh, man.
But there are good and bad queues.
There are some good and bad queues.
I feel like there's some technical things, too, here.
There are.
That we should talk about.
There are a few technical things. So what I have done is I've gone to the liberty of categorizing queues.
Whoa.
So
We're getting technical here.
get
people.
ready, because
Pull up.
here we go. Queue up.
Queues.
So the first and foremost is your standard queue. And when I think of a standard queue, I kind of think of a queue that has some switchbacks and a little bit of theming. So standard queues, I would say, are more commonly found at like Six Flags parks or some Universal attractions.
Or like the local theme park.
Or some local theme parks. Or like Cedar Fair parks.
Or the bank.
Yeah, well, I guess a bank is a theme. Universal pulled that one on us.
Oh, this is a really nice themed bank. It's themed to a Wells Fargo.
Wow. That's
Really
amazing.
authentic.
That's amazing.
So where do we get on the ride? So this is the bank. Oh. I thought every queue had a ride at the end of it. Is there a gift shop at least?
Could you imagine? We should totally pull that prank video. That'd be a good prank
Walk into
video.
like someplace with a queue and just start standing there, like
Be like, oh,
with our
wow,
cameras and like
this is amazing.
have a Brazilian tour group follow us through. What are these people doing? I think you should also do one where you just set up queues in public places,
Just
like
random
at a park,
spots.
and just people standing around.
That'd be pretty funny. A queue to go up the slide in town.
Yeah, or like at the water fountain. Like more than two
Or-
people line up. You're like, oh, whoa, hold on, okay, let me set up the queue here. Get
Where
those,
we go?
get those like retractable ones. So
So
standard queue.
That's a standard queue.
Okay.
It's got a little bit of theme into it. You can generally tell like how far along in the queue you are.
Because you can kind of see as you
switchbacks.
see the end.
You see the end.
You saw the beginning, you
eventually.
saw the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I think of it, the best one that I can think of is if you've ever been over to Magic Mountain, I
Yep.
think of the Revolution.
Oh, yeah.
You get in that queue. There's a little bit of like kind of Hispanic theming, some like a little Mexican town or a little southern town
queue's just
theming.
in
But the
it,
queue is
yeah.
just a standard queue. It's not very heavily themed, but it's not very boring either. But then there are other queues that I like to call the Pigpen queues. Now, these are like Haunted Mansion, where you wait in a queue, you wait in the switchbacks, and then they kind of pigpen you into a room, and then you stand there for a while.
So like Haunted
and then
Mansion,
they pigpen you into
Tower of
another
Terror.
room. Mickey's Philharmagic.
yeah, which always gets a
stuff
little
like that.
Yeah, Muppets Vision. 'Cause
Muppet Vision 3D.
people always freak out though because they're like,
Yeah.
I was there first. And it's like,
Where's
whoa.
my spot?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Pigpen queues where you kind of get herded. I guess herd queues.
Or, I like Pigpen. Now
Pigpen
I'm
queues.
just picturing it in my head. I'm like, yeah, I guess it's kind of a Pigpen.
Throwing people into a
Yeah.
pen. Now these aren't necessarily bad queues. I enjoy them.
No, because like Haunted Mansion's a great example of a traditional queue, a standard queue that moves into a Pigpen
Yeah.
that then is a part of the attraction,
Yeah.
but it's still in a way a queue.
Pigpen. Yeah, it's a queue.
It's still part of a queue.
However, then there are some bad Pigpen queues, kind of like, Star Wars Path of the Jedi. That's a poor queue,
Or
a
just
poor
every-
Pigpen
yeah,
queue.
line up, yeah.
Or you're just sitting around and everybody's just huddled together, and then when the doors open, everybody goes in.
Yeah.
So they can be full queues in and of themselves, or they can be implemented into normal queues.
Yeah.
And then we have my personal favorite queue, the Everything is Themed queue,
Okay.
which is stupidly over-themed stuff. So when I think of these queues, I think of like Transformers The Ride 3D, I think of Star Tours, I think of Expedition Everest, I think of Flight of Passage, I think of Navi River Journey.
Yeah.
You're in a queue, but there is a ton of stuff to look
The
at.
queue itself is almost an attraction.
Yes.
Because you could even throw in there like Adventures of Winnie the Pooh over at Magic Kingdom, where they have like interactive things for kids to do in the queue.
Well, that's a little later.
Oh, that's later.
Yeah,
Oh,
that is a
okay.
little later. The Everything is Themed queue is just immersing you into the universe, into the world of the
Okay.
attraction.
All right.
And then there's the worst of all queues, and that's the queue, which is just purely switchbacks. So when I think of this, I think of California Screamin' over at California Adventure. I think of Toy Story Midway Mania over at California Adventure. I think of pretty much every attraction on Paradise Pier over at California Adventure. I think of most queues over at Six Flags.
So
I think of like
so
Shrek.
in your mind, a standard has some theming, or at least
A little bit of engagement beyond just here's
okay.
the roller
But a
coaster.
queue,
here's
just
the
a queue
line.
queue is just literally
A line.
fences, and you're just going back and forth, and then get
Yes.
on the ride. Okay.
Yes. It's literally just here's a roller coaster, here's the line, stand in it.
Yeah.
Only thing you see is a roller coaster, like King Ka over at Great Adventure, El Toro over at Great Adventure. You're standing in a line. You got switchbacks on switchbacks on switchbacks, and they are the worst queues on the planet. And then we jump into one queue that you mentioned earlier, the interactive queue,
Yep.
which I think are very fun. So these are generally well-themed queues, so they could fall into our everything is themed queue category.
But they have an interactive.
They have an interactive element to it. So like
Right.
Space Mountain has an interactive element to it. And
Yeah.
these are generally tacked on to other types of queues,
Because
I
it might
would
not
say,
be the entire queue is not the entire queue is interactive, but there's a chunk like
or some elements to
like
it.
Space Mountain at Magic Kingdom. There is a portion where you have those video games
Yep.
to play,
Or
whatever.
Soarin' over at Epcot.
Yeah.
They have a lot of interactivity within the queues. Try to keep you entertained while you're waiting in a line.
Yeah.
And then we have the Myler queue. Now,
Is that actually named for somebody?
no,
Oh.
it's not the Miller queue. It's the
Oh.
Myler
I
queue.
kept reading it as Miller. I was like, who's Miller?
It's the Myler queue.
Oh.
So I think this debuted with Space Mountain because if you've ever walked down that queue, that line, without anybody in it, you're literally walking 3/4 of a mile to get to the roller coaster. And you're not waiting in any of it.
Yeah.
And so a good example of that is Space Mountain over at Magic Kingdom, and pretty much every Space Mountain, actually, except Paris. Paris, you don't dive into the mountain. You start outside of the mountain. But every other Space Mountain, as soon as you get into the mountain, you're walking.
So why is it called the Mylar?
Miler?
Or
Miler? Because you walk a mile?
Oh. It's like just some scientific term.
Should it have been the walking shoes queue?
So the idea is that it's just the queue, the length of the queue is the queue.
It's just so absurdly long. So like Indiana Jones is another good example of this over at Disneyland.
So really, you're a lot of those you don't. Indiana Jones maybe not so much, but some of the other ones you literally.
It's literally a half mile.
Well, and it's the walk that is the wait for the ride. Sometimes.
Yes.
I mean, there are other times, but yeah, sometimes the walk, the mile,
is the wait.
Is the wait.
How fast
everybody's just kind of moving.
How fast can you walk a mile or a half a mile to get to Indiana Jones?
All right.
Indiana Jones is literally a half mile queue.
Wow.
Each way.
I never realized.
It's so long, but it's so well themed.
Yeah.
So,
It makes a difference.
And then we move on to our next one, which is the stop and watch queue. So these are queues that have elements in them where you stop and you kind of watch a little pre-show element. So like if you Stitch's Great Escape, Dinosaur, Rock and Roller Coaster, even the Tiki Room over at Disney World.
That's a good one because some of those other ones turn into pig pins with a watch and queue.
Yep.
And then like Tiki Room is truly a queue, but with a watch.
With the watching
and
queue.
then go queue, yeah. Or watch while you're queuing. Yeah.
So, you kind of walk up to a little area, and with the Tiki Room, for example, you walk in, there's 3 different levels usually, and I've only really experienced these over at Disney World. You don't really see them really anywhere else.
No, because
I can't think of anywhere else off the top of my head
Tiki
that
Room
really uses
Land is a pig pin.
It's a pig pen queue.
But with a watch.
With a Dole Whip station there.
And a watch, too.
And a watch queue. But these ones, there's like 3 rows generally. They're elevated one higher than the other as they go farther back. And then they're kind of in a little hyperbolic kind of shape, I guess. And
so everyone can see.
So everybody can see what's going on in the front of them. So like for Stitch's Great Escape, for example, there's robots showcasing transportation of aliens.
Yeah.
For the Tiki Room, there's Tiki Room birds kind of welcoming you to the Tiki Room.
So sometimes it's pre-show, sometimes it's just something to look at.
A little more entertainment.
Yeah.
For Rock and Roller Coaster, it's explaining the whole how you're getting these backstage passes and getting on this extremely super stretch limo to go to the rock concert, to go see Aerosmith. At least at Disney World, at Disneyland, or at Disneyland Paris, it's really just, hey, we built this rock and roller coaster, go ride it, and that's it. It was really nothing. And then the last type of queue is the I'm not waiting, but I'm still waiting queue. And this is a new type of queue, relatively new. Also known as a queueless queue. Universal has really been pushing these. They built a whole water park around them.
The idea, yeah.
So this is where and it can also be kind of implemented with FastPass or seen with FastPass as
you
in
can
a
still,
way.
Yeah, you can still say you're still waiting. You're just waiting for your hour window to open up before you go. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is where you go up and you enter a queue virtually. And then you can go out and do whatever you want until your time comes, and then you come back and then you experience the attraction. So you're waiting, but are you really waiting? But you're still waiting.
You're still waiting.
Yeah. We know you're waiting.
Yeah. I'm waiting, but I'm not waiting. Yeah.
But am I waiting?
But I'm waiting.
But am I waiting if I'm eating? Am I waiting if I'm waiting in line for another ride?
Double waiting.
Am I waiting if I'm
queuing while I'm queuing?
Am I queuing if I'm queuing in a stop and watch queue? Am I queuing if I'm queuing in a queue?
And what about a pig pen queue?
Oh man,
Queuing while in a pig pen queue.
So many queues. So these are how I like to categorize queues.
And I would say a lot of this is probably what some of our gripes with certain theme parks or attractions come down to sometimes, because if you're waiting in a queue,
It stinks.
It stinks.
It
You're like, this
sucks.
is, and you know every minute that has passed. And in fact, it feels more like every minute's about 2 minutes long.
Every minute feels like 5 minutes long. Are
Yeah.
you kidding me? When was the last time you went to Magic Mountain and you stood in line for Goliath and that QQ was forever?
A lot of QQs there. But then you have the other extreme, which are the everything is themed queue, when you're like, oh, like that. Like I told my story about waiting an hour for Flight of Passage and being like, oh, that was quick.
Yeah.
Because the whole time I was looking at everything, listening to everything, experiencing everything.
Being thoroughly engulfed in the universe.
Yeah.
So there are right ways to do queues and there are wrong ways to do queues. So I think we should pick out our favorite queues.
I'll start.
All right.
I just said it. Flight of Passage.
That's your number one favorite queue?
Yeah, I would put it up there with probably one of your top ones because I know
Yeah.
how you feel about that queue. But I would put it up there with that one. I think it's the way it transitions, and then we talked about this on my trip recap, but the way it transitions from like a cave of like a Na'vi to like the abandoned like military to like then back to the natural and then into like the lab and then finally into the loading area. It was like, wow.
It was just
And
exquisite.
every part was unique, and every part was like I wanted to take pictures of everything. Like I want to take pictures of emergency exit doors because I was like, these are the best. Look at this trash can, like everything.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So
yeah, I would say my number one queue is probably Indiana Jones.
I knew it was gonna be, and I could see it obviously, but
Yeah.
I was gonna say it's up there with that in terms of theming and storytelling as you prepare to do the ride.
Yeah. Because Indiana Jones, as soon as you enter that temple, I mean, they created a whole language, a whole written language for this attraction.
Yeah.
Like, who does that? And you
Disney.
can walk around. Really, though, you can walk around and like translate stuff.
Yeah.
And then I would say the second best queue I have ever waited in is probably Expedition Everest.
I would also agree with that. And same comes down to storytelling because it's leading up to the lore of the Yeti.
Yeah.
It's the whole, you're in the Himalayas, you're at a guide, lodge or whatever.
There's a ton of history behind.
There's literally a
everything.
museum dedicated to the Yeti.
It's so great. And then I would say after that has to be Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey.
I'd see that too, yeah.
That was exquisite. Even
there are
though
parts that are like standard queue in there.
there are some standard queues
And then there's
before
some
you
parts
enter
that are
Hogwarts.
also stop and watch.
Yes.
And then there's the good everything is themed too.
Yes.
But yeah.
Which is where I would say like the standard QQ or the standard queue, not the QQ. There's no QQ in this queue.
No.
The standard queue, it's done well though.
It's still, yeah. It's
There's-
right on
it's
that
still-
brink of being everything is themed, but
Yeah.
it's still just a standard queue.
Under a
Yeah.
greenhouse.
Yeah.
But as soon as you enter Hogwarts,
yes.
even not being a Potterhead, I could appreciate everything that went
I
down
totally
in
agree.
there.
Yeah.
And it's
And
amazing.
I ran through it pretty fast, but even that I was
Yeah.
like, whoa, this is
It's
cool.
So cool.
Yeah.
But once you're in there, they even then they still push it through really quickly.
Yeah.
And then to round out my list, I would say Star Tours.
I like all of those. That's good. Yeah.
Do you want to give any honorable mentions?
I give honorable mentions to well, Pandora's pretty good. I'm trying to think back through some.
This is
the
where
new Big Thunder Mountain stuff that they've added.
all the interactive
All
stuff
the
with
interactive
that.
stuff. I think Disney has been doing a lot to add interactive. But a lot of those are going to be standard with
Yeah.
short bursts of interactive, like a single thing that you can do while you're standing at that specific spot.
Or sometimes they're a miler queue like Soarin' and Space Mountain,
With
where there's
an
some interactive
at
areas.
out there somewhere. Yeah,
So you like the big mountain interactive stuff. I haven't experienced a queueless queue, or the I'm not waiting but I'm still waiting queue. The queueless
well, I
queue.
mean, you have somewhat because of Fast
kind of with Fast
but-
Pass, but I don't really count that because I'm doing other stuff actively, whereas like Race Through New York with Jimmy Fallon,
You're truly waiting there for.
you're waiting in kind of a general pig pen area.
and then waiting for your
Yeah,
queue time to come up. Yeah,
yeah. So I'd like
I guess
to
I have
experience
with
that before.
Dumbo.
I
Even
guess
though it was
yeah, you
completely
have.
unnecessary because I could have just walked onto Dumbo. But we played the player for a while and then went and rode Dumbo.
Yeah.
It's a good way to do it. obviously implementation and what's available changes that. Like the Dumbo one's amazing because it's literally a play area.
Yeah, and I think when I get the chance to go to Volcano Bay,
I'll be interested to hear
that will be amazing.
Revisit this issue.
Yeah. See how that Cueless Queue works out. That Cueless Park works out.
Yeah, it's a whole park of that. That's the kind of
crazy
part.
thing.
Yeah.
I also want to give an honorable mention for exquisitely doing the Pigpen queue to the Haunted Mansion.
Yes.
Because no other attraction does it better than that.
True.
You know?
I would say Tower Terrace close.
Tower Terrace close, but Haunted Mansion, just the stretching room, it's such a different level.
I have
Literally.
a hard time with Pigpen queues in general, though.
Yeah.
Just because people don't know what to do.
No.
They just act like crazy people. And it's like, listen, they put enough of us in this room to make sure that everyone had a place.
Yeah.
So just calm down. Because I feel that way after the design room at Test Track. Because it kind of pigpins a little bit and then goes back into like a standard queue. And you're like, nobody can figure out how to get up that ramp.
You're like, what? Just
like,
walk.
Everybody just merged. Like
it's like driving.
It's like driving. That's the problem. Trust me.
That's an issue.
Yeah.
I do also want to say, I think Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man over at Islands of Adventure, has an extremely good miler queue.
Really?
Because you're walking down that thing for a really long time.
I've never noticed, I guess, because they're always usually. It'd
They're
be one thing
empty
if
when
it was
you're
a
going,
lame, if it was a lame miler.
Yeah. Like Space Mountain. Let's be honest. Space Mountain's
That's
miler
true,
queue
that's
is
true.
not.
And it's very obviously a miler because you can like literally see down it. Like, wow, where are we going?
We're walking a mile, and then you come back up. They have a moving rampway on the way back, so you don't have to walk 2 miles.
Yeah.
I think Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man, has a very good queue. Because it's very well themed the entire way, and there's lots of kind of switchback, stop and watch type of aspects to it, but you're constantly moving through.
Dudley
that.
Do-Rides has a terrible.
Oh my gosh,
Q.
Dudley Do-Rides QQ miler queue.
Both, yeah.
It's just two of the worst.
Bad.
It's so bad. I am so
Especially
glad.
when the time I was there, there was a bunch of like school groups that were there, and they were literally out of control. Like it was like middle school age kids. They were like jumping over walls and like climbing on things, and it was like here you are on this like mile long QQ, and you're like, somebody kill me, please. Like it was terrible.
See, when I went, it wasn't bad because it was raining and nobody wanted to ride it.
Yeah.
So I waited 2 minutes. And that's how long it took me and my siblings to run through that miler QQ.
I think I waited like a half an hour, and it was the worst half an hour ever.
That's brutal. Well, I hope I taught you a little more about queues.
Yeah, I guess I thought of different queues, but I never thought of categorizing them like that. And I like the way you did, and I agree with it all. And I think it does make such a huge difference in the attraction, and that's why it's such an interesting part of being a theme park enthusiast is thinking about queues, because you don't think about like that. Dudley Do-Rides, I maybe didn't enjoy that ride just as much because I was thinking about how horrible the queue was.
I enjoyed that ride a lot.
While going through that ride, like that was super cute, and then I'm like looking at everything in the ride, like it's just cardboard and cutouts, and stupid and
plastic.
Yeah.
See, but
stupid ride.
And when I went on that ride, I enjoyed it a lot.
So queue can do a lot to either up a ride or down, like really bring down a ride.
And it really can make or break not just an attraction, but a park as a whole.
I could see that.
Because I would much rather go to Knott's Berry Farm even and sit in those queues, even if the attractions aren't as thrilling as like Magic Mountain, where there is zero theming and zero entertainment.
During all this, I kept thinking of our local park, Elitch's, too, and how terrible their queues are.
Bad.
And I'm like, that's part of what I don't want to go there, because if I'm going to have to stand around, I don't want to stand around there.
No. I want to go on a dead day.
Yeah.
Just because I don't have to wait in line, because the lines are the worst.
We should do that sometime.
Go to Elitch's
on a dead day.
Fright Fest is still going on.
I know, but that's
generally pretty low.
Is it?
Generally.
Is everything open though?
Yeah, except the water park.
Well, obviously,
except the water park.
Since we've already had snow. Yeah.
Although it was like 80 degrees today.
I know.
I wore this sweater for whatever reason.
No reason. Like, I'm so hot.
It's a very comfortable sweater, though. 10 out of 10. Would recommend.
It looks very
Shop
comfortable.
Disney Parks app. Little pricey.
I bet.
Very good, though. Gotten lots of compliments on it.
Thank you for listening to the Unmistakably Magic Podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Well, I guess you're watching it. You should change that word to watching. Because we're no
Okay.
longer putting this up on iTunes.
That's
so
true.
if you haven't picked up on our changes here, we've moved the news out of the main podcast and made it its own deal. And that's available on iTunes and YouTube. But now the main show, the episodes, are available only on YouTube. Simply just kind of a space issue, and
It's a little more than that. We're going into a little transitional phase
we
here.
have some life changes coming.
Soon-ish.
So we're
Soon.
trying to figure out how to kind of do the podcast modified, and we thought we really enjoy bringing you guys the news every week, and we like talking about big topics, so we kind of separated those. So make sure you subscribe both on iTunes and on YouTube. Just search Unmistakably Magic on both of those. Obviously, you're
find us.
watching this on YouTube, so make sure you hit that subscribe button,
Hit that like
hit
button.
that like button,
Ring the bell.
ring the bell, be a part of that notification squad.
The unmistakably
And then
notified.
go over to iTunes and get unmistakably subscribed over there too.
Become part of the unmistakably notified squad.
And then make sure you follow us on Twitter. We're at Unmistakably Mag. We're Unmistakably Magic on Instagram. Facebook.com/Unmistakably Magic.
If you like what we're doing over here, I actually had quite a few people on my my team ask me if I sold merch.
Oh.
And I do. We do. We sell some merch.
You do what? What? You sell
What?
merch on the side?
We sell merch. Yeah, I secretly made the Space Adidas shirt and selling that on the side with that side hustle.
I want a Space Adidas.
With that
hoodie.
side hustle.
Side hustle your face in a minute.
Head over to unmistakablymagic.spreadshirt.com and purchase a shirt. Buy some merch.
Merch.
Get that merch. Rep for that merch.
Email us. We're unmistakablymagic@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Comments, questions, concerns, shout-outs.
Anything at
Anything
all.
at all.
If you think,
Business inquiries.
if you enjoy sitting in queues and you're not British, let us know.
And if you are British, can you explain that to us?
Yeah, I don't get that. That was a
Their
little
lo-
weird when I
their
was
love for
there.
queues.
It was a little interesting.
Big thank you to our friend Dylan over at Blast Off Branding for making our awesome logo featuring Push Trash Can. Again, it's somewhere over in this region,
Here-ish.
this area. Check out our friends at the Unmistakably Star Wars podcast. Those guys are
doing
always
stuff.
doing
Doing stuff.
doing stuff.
Rumor
I don't know.
has it that some things might be changing over there.
Oh, man.
And I might be joining.
Some internal drama.
Yeah, there's some internal drama going
I
on.
might
down
not
there.
be saying our friends anymore.
They're still
What?
our. They're still our friends.
They're still our friends.
They're still our
I
friends.
guess.
We're not going to be burning any bridges or anything.
Oh.
But rumor has it we
We did steal their logo and their name.
their name and everything. Pretty much everything. Not everything. We're very different from them. We do news better.
Oh, what?
Because of that,
Sick burn.
I might be jumping over there and joining Tyler
For
to
a Star Wars
start a
nude?
new news show
Well,
here pretty soon.
Stay tuned. We'll talk
Keep
about that as it happens.
Keep you updated on that. That is my shout out for the week.
All right. Stay tuned. We'll let you guys know when Cort starts a Star Wars news podcast, possibly.
Yeah. Could be a fun time.
Yeah.
Could be a real fun time. Which means I'll have to buy some Star Wars posters because
Yes, you will. Someone had some lithographs, but I don't know where they went.
oh, that'd be sweet.
Yeah.
Well, that just about wraps it up this week.
All right. Have a magical week.
See you real soon.